Hey guys, it's David. This week, Wes and I delved into pedestrian safety, talking about possible reasons why Americans on foot may be a little bit safer than they were a few years ago. We also explored whether higher gas prices are already changing travel decisions. And for better or for worse, Wes unveiled a car-loving alter ego. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you do, maybe tell a friend about it.
All right, welcome to Look Both Ways with David and Wes, pragmatic conversations about all things transportation. We're recording this live on YouTube. You can always find our episodes on whatever podcast platform you enjoy. I am Wes Marshall, professor of civil engineering, University of Colorado, Denver, and with me today is...
I'm David Zipper, and I'm David Zipper. I don't feel like sharing a title this time. I'm just going to be David.
All right, well... that's good. Save some time because we got a lot to talk about today, including pedestrian safety. Before we get to that, we want to mention that we have a website. Is that right?
It's a new website.
It's a new website?
Yes, it's very exciting for us and maybe for you too. Definitely for us because we've been working on this for longer than I think we want to acknowledge. But it is lookbothwayspodcast.com. Do I have that right? I hope I have that right.
Yes, that is the URL. And we set it up in a way where it should hopefully update automatically when these new episodes come out, which is my favorite part of the new website.
Yes, that is our favorite part. But for you, friendly listener, we actually have tagged every episode. And I think we're up to, 18 episodes now with the topics we discuss. So if you are a listener who is obsessed with car design or really excited about sidewalks or fascinated by transit, you can now, with a simple click, be able to see all the episodes where we discuss that, which hopefully will be useful.
Yeah, that should be useful for some people because, at some point, maybe we'll tag when we talk about those things in the episodes, but we're not quite to that point. And so this is episode 19. We did have the bonus one. So there are 20 episodes that are going to be up there shortly. So that's been
a while. Yeah. But please do feel free to join. Also, again, it's lookbothwayspodcast.com. You can also send us messages to tell us what we get wrong or to just share views or to send us spam because we get all three. We do look at the messages. We can't reply to everybody, but we do look at them and we welcome it. So I hope some of you will check it out.
And if anybody has suggestions for the ways we can make the website more useful to you, I'm all ears. So it's a good start. All right. So before we get into pedestrian safety, I know you're not a big TV guy, but I don't know if you heard this. This is news I heard today that our Secretary of Transportation is going back to his roots.
Road rules? He's going back on road rules.
He is filming a reality show. Apparently he has solved all our transportation problems already in like the few months he's been in this role. But he is filming the Great American Road Trip. So in honor of our 250th anniversary of being a country, him and his family, his wife, who's also a reality star, and however many of his kids he can talk into doing this, are going to drive across the country.
Does he have like 10 kids?
I think it's 9, but yeah, he's got a lot of kids. But some are, I'm sure, you get that many kids. I'm sure some are adults now. So we'll see if you can get all of them. And, the type of vehicle you would need to do a road trip with all those folks would be a lot. So the logistics is big. But like this Great American Road Trip, it's a YouTube show. They're trying to promote that everybody should be doing this a cross-country trip this summer in honor of the 250th. So I don't know. Are you going to watch this? Are you excited to see?
Am I going to watch this? No, I'm not going to watch this. Why on earth would I watch this, Wes?
It might give you good fodder for a podcast you do on occasion.
I mean, that's true, but I rely on you to watch TV that is something that we can discuss on the show because you do love it. So I'm not surprised to hear you said. Do you know that like if you go on the if you go on the USDOT website page for Mr. Duffy, it basically it says like in his like one paragraph bio, at least it did, that he and his wife were the first and longest married couple from reality TV in the country, as though this is like an accomplishment, like I don't know, like graduating with a PhD in something or accomplishing something while you're in the house. No, for him, it's being the first reality TV couple. Okay,
and the longest, right? So
the longest, yeah,
they're still together, I guess,
with their 9 kids apparently. But no, good for them, absolutely, sure. But yeah, no, I do find it kind of funny that Duffy is now telling Americans to go on long road trips when I just saw yesterday that there's gas stations in California that are now charging $8 a gallon. Maybe the timing, I'm sure they planned this months ago before we decided to go to war with Iran and close the Strait of Hormuz. But, timing is everything in these things. What can I say? It's a little awkward, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think he's trying to say, like, it's get out there, see America firsthand. Road trips are more than vacations. He calls them a meaningful way to understand the country, and he hopes other families will feel inspired by him and his family doing what they're doing.
Yeah, God forbid that you take the train or ride a bike to see the country. It's, of course, going to be in a gas-powered car. I mean, no, I mean, whatever. It's not a terrible thing. If you remember, there was sort of an ill-fated road trip that, who was it? It was Secretary Granholm under Biden and somebody else took to show that you could actually drive long distances in an electric vehicle. Do you remember this?
I don't remember that.
It was sort of comical because they ended up like a lot of EV owners 3 years ago not being able to find chargers that worked. So they had an advanced team that literally like grabbed a charger and blocked this like poor pregnant woman who was trying to charge her car from using it. It was like a disaster. But anyway, I mean, you can tell what I think of Duffy. I'm particularly irritated with him right now because his administration is about to mess up my city's bike lane network in Washington, D.C. by stripping away a chunk of the bike lane on 15th Street Northwest. So I'm a little more miffed at him than usual, but whatever, dude. I guess that's my answer. What do you think? Should I be more excited than I am?
I don't know. It's just funny. I feel like, when I see like how often like the president can go golfing, I was like, oh my God, I don't have time for this. Like, and the Secretary of Transportation taking like probably a multi-week road trip to film a reality show. I don't know. Like I have work to do, I guess. I don't know. It's just funny to think that these folks have this much time to do this sort of work.
Well, Duffy is an interesting person in this way because he's on Fox News for years. He's pretty good, honestly, at the sort of like soundbite TV shtick, and because of that, and because they don't have the Trump administration is not sort of awash in articulate spokespeople, Duffy's been on some of these shows talking about stuff that has nothing to do with transportation. He's become sort of like a spokesperson for the administration in some ways, kind of like the way that Buttigieg did. But Buttigieg took us off. I don't get the impression that Duffy is. He does, like, I'm not here seeing a long list of accomplishments coming out of USDOT. It's usually sort of like performative stuff like this, or going after those crosswalks that are rainbow colored, as we've talked about. The project management is not up to snuff from everything that I have heard, both on the record and off, about USDOT these days.
And I guess if you hire a reality star to be in your administration, you should expect to get a reality show out of that person, and that's what they're getting. So we'll see how it goes.
Are you going to watch it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there that will, and clips will emerge in other places where I can kind of just see those and go off of that. I'm not going to I think there's going to be 5 episodes. I'm sure they're all going to be like an hour long.
Where did you say it's going to be shown? Is it on?
It's on YouTube. It's the Great American Road Trip has a channel, I guess, and it's actually the same production company that put out Road Rules in Real World like 25 years ago is doing this. So
seriously.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, if it really matters to you, I will watch an episode and we can deconstruct it on Look Both
I got other stuff I'd rather you watch. We'll talk about those things another time.
You're going to make me watch Back to the Future again.
No. You already know that one. But there's some shows out there. Now I've been noticing on Apple TV, like half the shows, like somebody died in a car crash. Like that's like the premise of the show.
Yeah.
So I know some of them, I think there's some interesting things in there, but I'm going to have to, if we do talk about those, I feel like I'm going to, be the juggling one-man show trying to tell you all the stuff. And then,
I mean, there's a reason you think that. So listeners will not know this, but I don't know how many times now that Wes has texted me or emailed me saying, "Hey, David, did you watch this blah, blah, blah new show on Apple or on NBC or Netflix or whatever it is?" And the response is always the same, where I'm like, no idea what you're talking about. And I think like the sixth time this happened, you gave up. That was my impression.
No, I'm gonna bring it back. I'm gonna pick and choose. I'm not gonna make you watch it, but I think there'll be times when we can have a good discussion about some of the stuff that I find interesting in these shows. And I think it's a very common premise for television shows and movies and books, even that someone dies in a car crash. Like that sets up the whole.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the whole thing.
And I mean, road trips are too. You might have read, a guy named Jack Kerouac who had something to say about that.
I also saw a Burt Reynolds movie, The Cannonball Run.
Yeah, I know my friend Alex Roy set the record for Cannonball Run a while ago. So there's all kinds of stuff here.
Oh, I mean, those dudes are crazy. Like they do it like in 23 hours. I don't know what the numbers are, but I
think Alex was like 27 or 28, but it's utterly insane.
I mean, it's like New York City to LA, and they have like cars ahead of them, like looking out for police officers. They have radar guy. They go all out.
Now, those who know, the Cannonball Run has been around for like 40 years. Burt Reynolds did a movie about it, but it's a nonstop race from New York to LA. Yeah. And it's not safe, although there's not been a fatal crash to my knowledge with it. But
I think the record,
it's a whole thing.
I don't know when your friend set the record, but I think during COVID and the roads were pretty empty, like somebody broke the record by a lot more than had been done before.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I think some might say that's not exactly cheating, but a little different, because part of the trick is to choose your route and choose the timing so that you don't hit rush hour traffic that slows you down. But now actually Alex has moved on. He just drove cross country. I think he was the first person to drive cross country in a Tesla that was on autopilot the entire way, which is actually, we can talk about that maybe at a different time. That's kind of interesting in terms of like thresholds for autonomous driving. But he's a quirky dude, Alex Roy.
One of my colleagues here, like he was super into Tesla Autopilot, but he listened to our podcast and he kind of read up on a few articles after, and he canceled his subscription.
Wow.
Based on this, what we're talking about. So
it is.
I was shocked.
Is not easy. Yeah, it is. Well, autopilot is let's just say that unless you're a professional driver, you're probably not that great at sitting in the front seat, ready to take over at any moment for minutes and then hours on end. That's not how our human brains
and humans are not built for that. Like we are not built in a way that it's supposed to sort of wait around for nothing to happen. And then when something does happen, to jump into action.
That's right.
So
that's right.
All right. So I think now it's time for a word on the street, where we'll discuss a transportation issue that's in the news. And the word on the street today, I think Dave is going to bring to the table.
Pedestrian safety. There was an interesting and somewhat, I would say, surprising sort of press release or announcement that came out just a few days ago. So that would be in late March of 2026. And it was GHSA, which stands for, let's see if I get this right, the Governor's Highway Safety Association, which is comprised of sort of like these state DOT highway safety offices. They're all part of GHSA. But GHSA put out an analysis of crash data, finding that for the first 6 months of 2025, pedestrian crash deaths in the U.S. fell 11% year over year from 2024 to 2025. That is the largest individual annual year drop, GHSA says, since they began tracking those statistics 15 years ago. And now the number of pedestrian deaths, according to GHSA, for the first half of last year is the lowest total since 2020. And of course, 2020 is, well, I'm probably going to talk about this, was the year that the COVID pandemic really hit. So it's pretty interesting. A couple other quick stats before we jump into it. According to the statistics GHSA shared, Louisiana and Florida, and I believe actually Hawaii, if I got this right, they were tied for the most deaths per 100,000 people at 1.71. And the lowest for states were largely in New England or in Minnesota and Wisconsin, although weirdly Idaho had a really low level too. And in terms of trends, Mississippi, New York, Pennsylvania, California all fell more than 20% last year, the first half of last year, year over year. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. And it's the obvious question, I think, is why, assuming it's true. But Wes, why don't you kick us off? What are your initial reactions?
All right. So, I mean, I guess there are some reasons why the drop might be a real improvement. There have been a lot of targeted safety interventions over the years, and maybe they're starting to add up, like cities focusing on high injury networks, Vision Zero, stuff like that. Maybe it could be vehicle technology is starting to, be a bigger part of, the driver assistance that's supposed to stop for pedestrian.
Yeah.
Maybe it's infiltrated like the overall share of cars that have that, where it could be helping. I feel like it could be that we're kind of stabilizing post-pandemic. So it's almost like a regression to the mean, like we're getting back to normal, so almost back to the 2019 levels where, once the pandemic hit, the level of service was all of a sudden awesome, but then everybody was driving much faster. Enforcement kind of went away during that time because, officers are scared of catching COVID. So now we're kind of getting back to a little bit more enforcement, a little bit more maybe normal behavior as drivers. I don't know, I guess my question is it real or is it not? Because I think there are plenty of reasons to be skeptical too.
Well, according to the stats, there's now several years in a row where pedestrian deaths have fallen slowly until, the 6 months of last year, where apparently they fell pretty steeply. 11% year over year is a lot. So it does feel like something real is happening. Go ahead.
To be fair, we're still way higher than we were 15 years ago.
No, that's actually a really important point. I should have said that right up front. You're exactly right. Let's not declare victory, unlike some in the road safety world. We are so bad compared to every other rich country.
Better than the worst ever is still really bad.
Yeah, that's right. Because you're right. It was only 3 years ago that we had the highest number of pedestrian deaths since Jimmy Carter was president. And the only reason it wasn't even longer than that was because we didn't have data going back further, as far as I could tell. So we're not out of the woods by any stretch, but something positive, at least trend-wise, has happened in the last few years. One thing I thought was kind of funny, Wes, I didn't tell you this. I was out getting drinks, catching up with somebody in D.C. who works in road safety a week ago, and we were talking about how my friend had been talking to a couple of alums of Buttigieg's USDOT, under Biden, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, well we did this." My friend was like, "You did?" And they're like, "Yeah. It just takes a few years for all the work that we did around road safety under Buttigieg to really come to the fore. But now you're seeing the results of what we did." And let me just say, nice try. I'm like, what specifically did they do? Maybe you could argue for Safe Streets for All and some additional funding sources for some projects here and there, but they did nothing about car bloat. They did nothing really to reduce total driving. I find that a stretch. I don't know if you do too, Wes.
Oh, yeah. Especially, because if you look at where the risk still is, it still is systematically in the Sun Belt area, Southeast. Those places are still the most dangerous. But then if you look at where the changes are happening, where we're better and where we're worse from 25 to 24, it's all over the place.
It really is. There's no clear trend. Yeah.
Yeah. There's neighboring states moving in opposite directions. So there's no clear regional or like policy patterns you can see. I mean, my takeaway is it feels like some of the bigger states are driving the trend because like, California, Texas, Florida probably dominate our national totals.
Yeah, New York too. New York was down 20% plus.
Right. So if a few states just have a little bit of improvement, it kind of makes it seem like the whole country is doing better. And that is not the same thing, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, honestly, if the average American is likely to live in those big states and the big states get safer, then that's actually pretty good. Like I'm more interested in the total population trends than I am in the number of states that get better or worse.
Right. But if California has a 20% improvement, right?
Which I think it did. Yeah.
Right. But then it's hard to say that the policies of the Biden administration, it caused this national trend. You know what I mean? It's like one state.
Oh, yeah. Well, also there's some states that implemented a lot more of the sort of safety initiatives that Biden and his team were pushing. So, and, you see states here that had over a 20% decline year over year. It includes Oklahoma and Mississippi, which were not exactly reflecting the same priorities of multimodal transportation as, say, New York and California, which also had a decline of 20% plus. So I think it's very much up in the air. And my personal hypothesis is frankly what you just said, Wes, like is reversion to the mean. Like we're now like we're back to where we were when COVID struck, more or less. And maybe that's to be somewhat expected because COVID made some of us go a little crazy. Also, congestion is up, right? We know that traffic levels are up. And when vehicles are moving more slowly, they're less likely to strike and kill a pedestrian. So that could play a role here too. There's lots of trends that we just don't know the answer to this yet.
Is it worth just defining regression to the mean for folks if they don't know what we're talking about with that?
Well, sure. You're the professor. You do it.
All right. Yeah. I mean, so the way I describe it to my students is like if you play fantasy football, let's say, and like a guy has a great week and then you pick him up and put him on your team hoping he has a great week the next week. And it often is the opposite. He has a bad week. And what's happening is an example of regression to the mean where on average people will perform a certain way or, these states will have a certain level of safety. And there are some, years or months that might have a worse outcome and some that have a better one. So in terms of like road safety, if we perhaps go out and do an intervention on the street right behind me that has bad safety, and then it gets better, we can't just automatically say that it's because of the intervention. Because if we had done nothing, chances are that it would have gotten better because it would have just regressed to its average. And just because it had a bad year or bad whatever it is in terms of safety, it's the same thing. So,
and that's different actually from another, in some ways it might sound similar hypothesis, right, Wes, where you could simply say that post-COVID, driving behavior is becoming more normal year over year, as people actually are driving differently and a little bit less recklessly. That's not reversion. That's not reversion to the mean, I suppose. That's actually a just sort of like what would be the right way to put it? It's like a return to prior behavior, which isn't really like a slogan or jargon, but it would actually make sense intuitively, right?
Yeah, no, it does. But I mean, it could be both of those things happening.
Yeah. No, I think it could. And I don't know the answer to this. There may be listeners who have their own theories and, feel free to contact us on our new website, lookbothwayspodcast.com with your ideas. But I think, we do a lot of criticism about road safety and by no means should the U.S. be declaring victory. But this is a positive sign. I think we need to acknowledge that for sure. And I actually would hope that we have researchers who are looking into it and can help shed some light on what's really going on here, because I'm not going to lie, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would help to have more information because right now all we have is the state level numbers and you can see where it's gone up or down. Like, so I would want to know whether it's in urban places or rural places or we would need a lot more information to really dig into like the hypotheses.
What kinds of roads, what times of day?
Exactly.
So weekends versus weekdays. I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
Because if you look at what's happened over the last 15 years, where we've had the increase in pedestrian deaths is at night. I mean, the daytime pedestrian deaths has actually remained remarkably consistent over that whole time period. It's the night deaths is where it's just gone up and up and up. So are we improving there? Did we improve during the day? Where are they? There's so much you can ask, and we don't have the data to that level, geography or detail to answer any of those yet. This is just kind of some big picture hypotheses as to what's happening. Like, is this real progress or not? And
by the way, that what you just mentioned, that whole nighttime phenomenon, is another question that I think is still unanswered in road safety discourse, which is why are pedestrians dying in so much higher numbers after the sun goes down in the U.S.? I haven't seen a definitive answer to that.
Because I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean,
well, I've seen some bad answers. There was a New York Times investigation a few years ago that kind of pinned it, not entirely, but largely on the shift toward automatic transmissions. Did you see this? Which doesn't make any sense to me, because Canada also has automatic transmissions, and they're not seeing the trends that we are.
But the automatic transmission thing happened way before these shifts. I mean, I still have a manual car, but my car is a 2000 Jeep Wrangler, and it's hard to even find that these days. So, I mean, I feel like that happened more in the 90s, 80s. Like that shift is not recent. I mean, if you look at, I've seen somebody show when the iPhone came about in 2007, how pedestrian safety just got worse and worse since then. Or you could do the same thing with your infamous car bloat.
Yes and no. Like the U.S. does have unique car bloat compared to other countries where our cars are bigger than anybody else.
Yeah.
But lots of countries have iPhones. iPhones are not, this is actually one of my pet peeves. People are like, oh, it's definitely the rise of the iPhone that led to pedestrians getting killed more at night. Well, Finland has iPhones too, and so do Canadians, and we're not seeing similar trends there.
Totally agree with you, but I'm just saying people can put out graphs just like the one you're saying that try to show that. But
sure.
My point is that it's a lot of things. It's not any one of them, and it feels like, the logic you're using is, they have the same thing, but you can sort of prove or disprove a lot of them in different ways. So it's just, it's not that simple of a problem. And what I'm having trouble kind of wrapping my head around with the new data is that there's very little consistency in terms of the geography. It doesn't make sense why similar places aren't improving together. And somebody in our chat mentioned, I think Paul said that Maryland, New Mexico, New York accounted for 2/3 of the drop, just those three states.
Oh, wow. I didn't actually even know that. Yeah, no, that's right. And this is, to your important point about recognizing this is, one set of observations for a 6-month period, and we need to get more data over longer periods of time and look at it more closely. But it is, I don't know, I find it intriguing. We've seen, for so many years there, Wes, it was like every single blip of news about pedestrian safety in the U.S. was awful.
Yeah.
And now that's not entirely the case. And I would just like to understand more. I can't remember if I mentioned this on the podcast before, but every now and then I'm asked, as I was when I was at Northwestern a few weeks ago, by academics or grad students, what are some big questions that we'd like to see more people spend time on or be thinking about? And I always think of traffic safety, pedestrian safety in the U.S. We don't know what's behind these trends really in a relative sense. We know directionally that car bloat matters and fast arterials matter, so forth and so on. But I would love to see more nuanced understandings of that if we can wrap our heads around it.
Me too. And I obviously do a lot of my research in those areas. So come join me.
I know. No, I think it's, talk to us about it. I think it's really important. And if you're doing great research in that, let us know. And personally, I like to be able to share findings like that on social media and elsewhere because it's important.
But I just want to warn people, be a little bit thoughtful about stuff. I remember I reviewed one paper and they basically said sidewalks cause pedestrian deaths. I'm like, I mean, because
if you don't have sidewalks, people won't walk, right? It's all about
their statistical analysis showed that the pedestrian deaths were happening where there's sidewalks. So their conclusion was we need to get rid of sidewalks. That would help pedestrian safety. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? think for a second, like where are the pedestrians going to be? Well, where the sidewalks are. So of course you're going to have that correlation.
If we want to, like, get rid of car crashes, just confiscate everybody's automobile and you're done.
There you go. Yeah.
Now, that actually was the thought I had when I saw in that GHSA thing that one of the safest states for pedestrians was Idaho. And I was like, I wonder if that's because like literally nobody walks outside of like a few brave souls in Boise or something.
Yeah, I mean, I've done some research on the idea that if you can just make your road so dang dangerous that nobody in their right mind would ever walk or bike on them, like that is the way we've been trying to improve safety on those fronts for the last like 50 years. But that's not real safety. Like that is still, I don't know, there's a latent demand under there that, it's not the solution we want. We want places where people can get around in different ways and people that can't drive or kids or whatever it is. So we can do better.
I agree. Let's do roundabout. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to be talking about gas prices a little bit more. We hit on that in the last episode, and they've risen even higher. You mentioned California having prices close to $8 or over $8. Is that right?
And they're in a few places over $8 a gallon.
The national number is up over 4, though. I saw that today.
Yep.
But with that, like we mentioned last time, there are some possible good things. And I've seen a couple examples of transit systems that have reported higher use. So I think Santa Maria, California said they had like between 8 and 11% increase in
Maria?
Santa Maria.
Where is that?
I don't know, man. Look it up.
I've never heard of Santa Maria. Sorry, keep going. I didn't mean to get in your way.
Los Angeles did too. I've heard anecdotal information. Like I've seen it in Denver. Like whenever I've ridden the train recently, it feels like there's more people than usual. I've heard similar things with New York, but that could also speak to congestion pricing that's happening there. So it's hard to say. But like the bigger picture is, and this is something that annoyed me. It's probably a dozen years ago. I'd have to actually look to see when these papers came out. But like one of the things that annoyed me at that time was that people were basically saying that ridership is the only way we can value transit. So we're not going to fund transit unless you can show ridership. Like that is the way we figure out whether transit is worthwhile or not. And my thinking at the time is that transit has value beyond that. Like I think like maybe I just read Black Swan, the book at the time. And like my thinking was, what if something happens like, something that happens half a world away where gas prices double or triple overnight? There's going to be sort of structural differences between who is worse and better off. So we did a couple papers at the time getting into this, and like the results weren't surprising, but I think it was still interesting to look at. So I don't know, big picture, like, does transit have a resiliency value, or was I just kind of wasting my time? Like, is this something that's going to be real? Do gas prices have to get really up to $8 for us to see a change? Is going from like 2 to 3 to 4 not enough? Like, what are your thoughts on kind of the downstream impacts of gas prices in terms of transit?
Well, I feel like there's a couple of things that you're getting at here. I think maybe to start with, you're asking like, how do you evaluate the value of transit, right? Like the societal value. Is that what I understood correctly?
Yeah. I mean, because I would think, when gas prices double or triple, like even if I never use transit, all of a sudden I have the ability to, like, I'm better off than someone that doesn't have transit nearby, right?
No, that's true. Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, it's interesting. A few years ago, I wrote a bunch of stories about access, which we've talked about on the podcast before. Like the access meaning sort of the ease with which you can reach the places that you want to get to. Yeah. And for transit, it's been sort of like a guiding principle for a lot of reorganizations of transit routes, particularly buses, since rail is kind of fixed. But the idea is like access is a way of saying like you look at where the job's located and how quickly can you reach them given the frequency and the routes of the system. I like the idea of emphasizing access over ridership in determining the value of transit, because like what we're seeing now is a shock that is a great example of something that's exogenous to a transit agency's operations entirely. Like there's nothing that a transit CEO or staff can do, I think, to sort of like, to handle this, or like you're going to see, but it's going to have a big impact on ridership, right? It's just intuitive, or it can have a big impact. So if you are a transit agency, it makes sense to evaluate your service not based on ridership alone, but based on the extent to which the routes and service frequencies enable useful journeys. And that means things like gas price changes or weather or special events are going to move your ridership up and down in ways you can't predict or control for, but access is entirely within your control. So that's the first point I think I would make. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, you said the word shock in there, and the name of the paper was actually The Shock Heard Round the Suburbs. Like that was the paper we had published. And like that's what you found, is that the strongest predictor of resilience was proximity to transit. It was not whether people currently use it or not. So you saw,
right?
We did it for Denver, and we modeled what would happen with gas prices doubled and tripled. And in and around downtown, things are kind of green, but once you get to the suburbs, it's all red. But you have these kind of green patches along all the rail lines. And then when you get to Boulder, like Boulder was green as well, because there's a lot of access in that area.
Well, you're describing access there, right? Do I have that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Totally describing access. That's what
I think we're on the same page.
Access.
If I understand. Yeah. Because you're basically saying like resilience of your transportation network that's attributable to transit relies on access. In other words, if people who are driving are still able to get where they want to go, if something happens and they can't drive anymore because, for example, gas is so expensive, they're going to value having decent transit service that's an option. And in much of the country, that's not the case, but it sounds like you were finding places where it was in Colorado, right?
Right. So your region would be better off if you have a transit system that people can access, that people can use if something like this comes up. And I think that's where you're going to see, like, if this happens, like there's going to be regions that are better and worse off. And having transit as sort of a resiliency value to it underlying your region will help the cause.
That's right. So I don't want to pick on any particular region, but I don't know.
Why not? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to pick on a place I don't even know that well, which is part of the problem. But like, like the Dallas Metroplex is famous for being super sprawled, right?
Yeah.
So and also there's the DART system is beleaguered for other reasons right now that are not worth going into. DART is the Dallas Area Transit System. But my point is that a sprawled transit system that doesn't reach a lot of places and has relatively low frequency, you're just not going to provide much value or of resilience for something like what we're seeing now with a big increase in the cost of gasoline. So residents there are frankly a little bit more screwed transportation wise compared to residents in a place like Boston or a place like Seattle, where you're much more likely to have people living in a place where they may not take transit, but it is available in 15-minute frequencies and gets them to a lot, if not all, of the places they want to reach, right?
Totally. Yeah, I agree. Like, so we delved so deep that we were using like the regional traffic demand model for Denver, and we couldn't really do that apples to apples with other cities. So we ended up just looking at this region, not trying to compare it to like Dallas, Fort Worth, or places like that. But I would expect similar trends. I mean, obviously there are different ways to be resilient. Like one of them, the obvious one we found, is to be rich. Like high income places were fine either way. Like transportation did not become unaffordable for them. But for most people, it did. Like the transportation costs spent on that got to a threshold that would be considered unaffordable. And it was because they lived in places where they had to commute like 40 plus minutes, and there wasn't transit as an option. There wasn't sort of walking, biking as an option. And those are the things, like, part of this is not just the transit, it's the built environment. And, maybe where jobs in proximity to jobs is part of that access too. But
it's relevant for e-bikes too. I've not seen any data yet, but I would imagine that places that have decent biking infrastructure, you're probably going to see an uptick in e-bike purchases in the last few weeks as gas prices have risen, because e-bikes are really cheap for a marginal ride.
Well, we mentioned in a previous episode that some of those e-bike companies might be going under. Like maybe this is a life preserver.
It's hard. Yeah, I mean, just rationally speaking, gasoline being up by a third across the country in a matter of weeks has to make every other mode more appealing. I know I've seen anecdotal evidence of from dealerships saying that you're seeing a big increase in people coming in asking for electric cars, for example. It would make sense that this would also provide a tailwind for transit and e-bikes. It's sort of, I think it has to. The real question is just the extent of it. And the longer this goes on, the higher the likelihood, I think, that people will end up actually potentially, changing how they travel, which could be, as we talked in a previous episode, it could be one of those sort of silver linings of a pretty awful situation overall.
Yeah, no, it could be a silver lining. And I think, kind of everybody has the ability to, no matter where you live in terms of like rural places or suburbs, like an EV could be an option. But at the same time, like more urban people can't. I mean, if you don't have a garage, it's sort of hard to have an EV. But I think we still need those sort of structural built environment type places. We have to build places that has this resilience sort of built into it. And what we've been doing for the last 50 years is building the opposite. So people are stuck in places where they don't have any other viable options. Like if, not just gas prices, like say you're Tiger Woods and you just had a DUI and all of a sudden you can't drive anymore and you live in Florida where you don't really have good options. What are you going to do? Like he could obviously hire a driver. He'll be okay. But for a lot of people, you don't have that sort of income to put towards that. So you're stuck. And if you have a job that requires you to be there or other commitments, we haven't provided them the ability, the freedom to have other options available to them.
Yeah, no. At the most, resilience is a hot topic or a trendy topic, I would say, in a lot of policy discourse, maybe in academia as well. Wes, you and me.
It's funny. Like, when I first became a PhD student, like sustainability was all the rage, and then it became livability, and then it became resiliency. But to be honest, we were actually doing almost the exact same work and just calling it something different. Like, it didn't really shift like the fundamentals of it. It was just under a different umbrella.
I feel like that sometimes happens in policy discourse or in academia. Am I crazy to think that?
No, not at all.
What is it like? Fads are not just for teenagers; they're for academics as well. But with resilience or sustainability, whatever you want to call it, I actually do think of resilience as being a little bit different in the sense that it could be applied to climate. I think what we're talking about here is resilience in the sense of just giving people options in how they travel specifically.
Yeah, I think for the sake of that study, we were just trying to do something we had to operationalize it in some way. And gas prices was a way we could do that. Like we could put that into the model and see what happens. Like it's harder to, start modeling, at least with a typical transportation model, like wildfires or floods or other resilient type things we hear about.
This is the problem with a term like resilience that becomes like a Rorschach test. It means whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah.
But I think if you get away from like the climate aspects of resilience and just say for transportation, and this is what I think is a little bit more specific and I kind of prefer it. Resilience simply means that when weird stuff happens, you can still get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
That is really largely predicated on having duplicative services or optionality in how you move. And if you don't have density, it's virtually impossible. If you do have density, it then requires having bike lanes and transit service such that they become viable. But you're right. I think that that if this gas price increase goes on, it is, I think, going to create a little bit of a diverging situation where metro areas or cities and neighborhoods that do provide real options in how people travel will have an advantage in terms of preserving quality of life for their residents compared to those where, you're just going to have to drive a lot everywhere because that's the only mode that's available.
And there is another level to this where it's not just transit, it's getting to the walking, biking. So the second paper we did looked at just Denver, and we looked at the resilience, how that is affected by the ability to sort of walk and bike. And you saw the same thing like when Sandy hit New York City. Like transit was flooded out. Like nobody could take the train post Sandy. But biking, from what I remember, was like the one way people were still getting around the city.
Oh, yeah. When there was a strike, I think it was in London. Don't quote me on that. But it was like the all-time high for bike share trips in London was when there was a transit strike in the tube. It just sort of makes sense. And it's one of the great advantages of having density is you're able to actually have or invest in having credible optionality for other ways to travel. So,
right. If my car breaks down, I have another way to get here. If my bike gets a flat tire, I have another way to get here. If the train isn't running for some reason, I have another. I mean, I live in a place, and I'm fortunate that where I have a half dozen really good options to get to where I need to go for most of the trips I take. And like for me, I mean, I don't want to get in like a soapbox here and brag, but the gas prices aren't affecting me that much because it is what it is,
Well, aren't you fancy? I'm just kidding. It doesn't really affect me either. Should we?
The guy that works from home.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do use my electric bike share membership to get around town, but that's also unaffected. So whatever. Should I do my roundabout?
All right. Well, what do you got?
My roundabout topic is actually a little bit from the news. It was just a couple weeks ago. It was not a big story, but I thought it was sort of interesting that as of, I believe, just March of this year, Lyft Line, which is the shared Lyft service, is now eligible for commuter benefits in 14 cities across the country. Previously, it was just 4 cities. So an additional 14 cities, including, by the way, an additional 10 cities. It's up to 14 cities. Okay. Including, by the way, Denver and DC. They were both added to the list. So both Wes and I, if we used shared ridehail, we could do it that way. Uber Pool, which is the shared Uber service, is already available everywhere. And for those who don't know how commuter benefits work, according to federal law, up to $340 per month for commute expenses can be tax-free if it's for transit, if it's for shared ride hail, or if it's oftentimes, and we'll get to this, for employer parking. So I find this interesting because there is some research about shared ride hail, which, by the way, is nowhere near as popular as private ride hail. People don't really like shared ride hail all that much.
Have you used it ever?
I have. It's kind of weird because you go out of your way on the route, or you're sitting next to somebody who's like loud talking into their phone or eating potato chips or smells. It's just not very comfortable. And I can only imagine how women must feel if they're next to a creepy guy that they can't control in the vehicle. But there's been research looking at shared ride hail that found that this idea that shared ride hail is good because it's sharing, it reduces cars on the road, is actually BS. Because shared ride hail, according to Bruce Schaller, we can include the research in the show notes, actually increases total vehicle miles traveled in a metro area because those ride hail vehicles are often driving around deadheading with nobody inside them, or they're going out of their way to pick somebody up or drop them off. So you actually end up with more miles on the road, more congestion, more pollution, more of all of that. Though that is, to me, a situation where you ask, why on earth would we want to subsidize this behavior? Subsidies should be for when there's a societal good that's coming out of something from an equity perspective or efficiency, which means like maybe you're addressing a positive externality. I would argue that biking and transit have positive externalities because you could argue they allow people to travel without creating congestion that slows everybody else down. That's not the case for shared ride hail. So I just find it very peculiar that we as a country would be subsidizing it. Wes, do you think I'm wrong?
I mean, I can make a case for as to why.
Why?
It's politically attractive. I mean, it seems like an easy, it seems user-friendly.
The real politic answer. Okay.
It seems tech forward, like that sort of stuff. It feels innovative compared to saying we're going to invest.
Should we, Wes?
Oh, no. Like, why it doesn't make sense. Like the per trip subsidies, like don't scale. Like that's one problem that's always happened. I mean, historically, the way we've subsidized ride hailing has been as a replacement to Access-a-Ride. So disability type things, like for some disabled folks that don't need a specialized vehicle, like this sort of thing, if you look at the numbers for how much it costs per trip for most accessoride type situations, it's a really high number. So some transit agencies think that this is like low hanging fruit. Like, oh, let's just outsource it to Lyft or Uber. But I mean, most of the ones I've seen have come and gone. Like, I know there's still some out there, but a lot of those, once they realize that it doesn't scale very well, that the costs are unpredictable with surge pricing. You don't have much control over the fare, and that's gone up and up over time with Uber and Lyft since they came to market. So there's plenty of reasons as to not. So I don't know. Like, I've not seen many long-lasting examples of subsidizing ride hailing. Have you? Am I missing some?
No, there was, I thought, a pretty cool program in St. Petersburg, Florida years ago where the transit agency was providing almost free Uber rides at night when the system was shut down, the transit system was shut down, so that people could get home from hospitality jobs. So I thought that was actually kind of cool. But something like this, where you're just sort of subsidizing potentially at rush hour, since these are commutes, shared ride hail trips strikes me as kind of nuts. I'm not sure it's worse. In fact, it's probably not worse than subsidizing employee parking, which is part of this.
Yeah, we could start getting into the parking cash out, like Donald Shoup type research.
But before we do that, like it's probably worth just noting, because a lot of people, I'm sure, are like, oh, well, it's great that you can have subsidized parking where you work. Well, the problem is when you do that, you're creating an incentive for people to drive and park instead of taking these other modes that are a lot less polluting and take up less space. And of course, parking in any sort of environment is going to increase the cost of the building and increase rents. It's just a step away from affordability, is what I would say.
Right. And what I mean by parking cash out is that this is a policy that gives people the ability, instead of being forced to take that free parking space, it allows you as the employee to take whatever the value of that parking space is as your benefit instead. So it actually incentivizes people not to drive and take advantage of like what is often considered a perk.
And just to be clear, that means like if I'm eligible for employee parking and I don't take it, I might, and that employee parking was going to give me like $100 per month benefit. I might literally get $100, right?
Yes,
that's the idea.
You're right. Basically, they'll put that money into your account and you don't take that benefit.
And this is not a federal policy. I know there was some talk about trying to create it when Democrats had power, but there are states that do actually mandate parking cash out policies. I think Washington State does, DC does, basically making it an option for people who work at a company with, I think, more than, it depends, like 30 or 50 employees. It makes a lot of sense, but that makes way more sense than how we set up federal commuter benefits, because we're subsidizing stupid stuff here. And we're not actually giving people money to say thank you for not actually taking up the space with a car. You're actually doing us all a good societally by not driving. And here's some money that you would have otherwise received if you'd driven. To me, that makes a lot of sense.
It does. And I feel like this is also the kind of program that could be taken advantage of. If like I'm an Uber driver, or Lyft line, I just have my buddies jump in and we can just do a bunch of short trips and take all that. I don't know. Maybe. It feels fishy. Like I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean,
it doesn't seem like it's something that could have any real system level impact that's positive.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, let's be real. Is this the biggest problem in the world, or even like the transportation system? No. But I think it's actually worth stopping and pausing and saying, you know what? Shared ride hail is actually not a good thing for society, and it's dumb to subsidize it as a result. So I just want to get that out there on the record.
There is the issues, like it requires people to have a smartphone and a credit card. Service availability is not going to be even across a metro area. Like ADA compliance is going to be super inconsistent. So there's those sort of issues where we haven't even hit on yet that are, I don't know. It would have been worth really thinking about those before just throwing this as the solution, right?
I agree. I don't think it's a good policy. I think we agree it's a bet. We got to find more things we disagree on. Maybe we can make that a goal for a future episode where Wes and David clash.
Yeah.
We did that early on in the podcast, but now I feel like maybe we know it's a problem. We're on the same page.
I think that first episode, like the free transit thing, I was just playing maybe I need to play devil's advocate more often, or maybe I need to come up with like a character where I'm super pro driving. Maybe I'm Johnny Transportation and I love driving. I love talking about myself in the third person. I hate transit, and that's going to be my character for the show.
It sounds pretty natural when you said it there. I mean, I thought that was credible. You should do that. Yeah,
Johnny good. Transportation's here, and I want to subsidize Uber and Lyft all day, every day. Hyperloop, please sign me up.
I think I need a drink.
Well, it is that time.
Let me prepare. Actually, I'm going to prepare my drink a little bit here really quick. Give me like 5 seconds. Do you have yours already ready to go?
I do. Although,
what is it?
I was up in the mountains over the weekend, and one of the nice distilleries up there is Breckenridge. So I have some whiskey from Breckenridge Distillery.
That's your favorite. So, but we didn't actually say we call this Rail Drinks. This is the part of the episode where we have a drink to say happy, like have a good evening, what have you. And you have whiskey because you love whiskey, as we all know. I actually have something weird. Can I show you?
Right up your alley too.
Here, check this shit out. Sorry, I'm not supposed to curse, but I did. It's called Rucello. It is rhubarb alcohol from England. And my wife was in England and picked up a bottle of it because she thought it was really good. And I'm not going to lie, when I tasted it, it was not very good. However, she said that it's much better with ginger ale. So I brought a ginger ale in and I'm mixing it, and I'm hoping it's going to be much better this way. I love rhubarb, so I'm open to this.
So it's a rhubarb what? What kind of alcohol?
It's like a rhubarb liqueur. Like it's like
So
sugar,
like,
alcohol, and obviously lots and lots of lovely rhubarb. It's a little bit confusing in that way. It doesn't say what kind of alcohol it is.
All right.
But I'm going to give it another shot. Cheers.
Cheers either way.
That is better. It tastes like do you like rhubarb pie?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big dessert guy.
No, you're a TV guy, not a dessert guy. Okay.
No, like I'd rather have this for dessert than a dessert.
Wait, can I see your glass again? Let me see your glass.
It's actually a.
Is that like a beaker? What the hell are you drinking out of?
It's a beaker.
Do you not have a shot glass anywhere?
No, I'm at work, man. Like.
Yeah. So you can bring whiskey in, but not a shot glass? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I happen to have a beaker. It's nice and clean. I use that.
That makes total sense.
He lied
lyingly. Okay. Yeah, sure. I'm just glad that you're happy. That's all I can say. What else do we need to talk about?
When will we be back?
We will be back in 2 weeks, April 14th at 6 p.m. ET live stream once again. We'd love to have you there. And you can always get in touch with us through our website, lookbothwayspodcast.com. You can also just email us directly at lookbothwayspod@gmail.com. And by the way, I'm coming out to Wes's neck of the woods, or your neck of the woods, Wes, in Denver. The week after April 14th, like the 21st, I will be giving a keynote at the University of Denver for an event called The Road Ahead. So we'll maybe put a link to that in the show notes for those folks in Denver who might want to come out on the 21st of April in the morning. And we may, knock on wood, Wes and I may do a little something in the evening then, but you'll have to follow us on Blue Sky or I don't know. We'll figure out some way of publicizing it if that comes together, but we're going to try to.
Well, we'll mention it on the 14th in that episode.
That's true. That's a good way to do it. Yeah. That makes sense. Anything else? Did I leave anything out?
No, I think that's good. Thanks for listening in. You can contact David where? You have a website.
Oh, yeah, that's right. DavidZipper.com, but that's fine.
Sign up for your newsletter, which I do love the name of your newsletter, by the way.
Paved with good intentions. Thank you, Wes. I appreciate that.
What's
your newsletter called?
I call it my super infrequent newsletter because
I mean, you're not lying. I don't remember the last time I got one, so it's definitely not a lie.
No, I did it a couple of times in the first few episodes of this. I was like, hey, newsletter people. And then for whatever reason, like the way the newsletter worked, it it doesn't send out immediately. It took a few hours. So people were getting the newsletter about listen to the live podcast like after the podcast had been taped. So it wasn't.
That's a sad story. That's a sad story. But it's good to see you, Wes. I'm glad
good to see you too. And it'll be nice to have you here in Denver. So maybe we will do a live podcast. So we'll see.
That'd be great.
All right. See you next time.
All right. Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.